This story is called Terrifying Peter Brady. Even though I had found a brown-skinned writing partner, the agent still wouldn't sign us. He took my calls but seemed disappointed. I hadn't found an African-American woman. Rajiv and I did everything we could to get the attention of agents and managers. We doctored up a fake cover page of the Hollywood Reporter that talked about how great and funny we were. It was an obvious stunt. We mailed that PDF to over 100 offices in town and got no response, except for one agent's assistant who suggested Rajiv and I provide sexual favors in exchange for him passing our materials on to his boss. He kindly included a photo of his junk for our consideration. We passed. After that gimmick failed, we created our own fake agent named Joel Greenstein. We bought a fax machine because it was the early 2000s. We designed a letterhead for Joel Greenstein. My friend Dallas laughed at the name we chose. Joel Greenstein? Do you think his name is Jewish enough? It's a little on the nose. Why not go all the way and call him Abraham Silverman? I thought about it for a sec and decided, no, let's stick with Joel Greenstein. And we started faxing agencies all over Beverly Hills from the office of JG. Saul, Joel Greenstein here. We met at the thing last month. What a crazy night, huh? Too much blow, too few hookers, am I right? Anywho, got a great writing team I'm managing. They also need an agent I can team up with, and together you and I can sell the shit out of Dan Steadman and Rajiv Sagamani. They've got some great specs. You and I could get these boys staffed on a show by September. Give me a call on my cell number listed below. Later, man. Good to run into you again last month. You're the best, JG. Since Hollywood runs on fear and flattery, one or two agents actually called my cell. I had changed it to, sorry you missed me, intentionally leaving off my name. When I picked up and someone from a real talent agency was on the line, I changed my voice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is Joel. Dan and Rajiv, yep, I manage them. Cool. You got my fax?
All this was said with a very bassy voice that sounded nothing like my regular speaking voice. I think we got one meeting with Joel Greenstein's scam, but it never led to us getting signed. It was becoming clear we needed to generate our own work, to film our own TV pilot, and show what we were capable of. After all, I had made the kid shows in the 80s on my own. I had made missionary videos in Brazil using 2 VCRs as an edit system. I'd created a music video series called Dirt TV that ran for 8 episodes in Florida. I missed being in production on the projects I wrote. We were churning out hundreds of pages of other people's shows, and no one was reading our work. My day job was as a production assistant on Whoopi, an NBC show TV guide called one of the worst sitcoms of all times, not to brag. They shot in New York, so I never met my boss, Whoopi Goldberg, or any of the cast members. I was their West Coast PA, and it was my job to deliver the nightly script changes to the NBC and Carsey Werner executives living in Los Angeles. Basically, I photocopied scripts and delivered them to homes in the middle of the night. My office was a closet filled with cords and tape decks. I worked next to the offices of that 70s show. No one really knew who I was or what show I worked on. Every Monday morning, my boss, Kurt Skemper, invited me to the table reads of that 70s show. It was so great being one of the 25 people who got to listen to the cast read the script for the first time. I had no idea Ashton and Mila would end up together. At the time, she was in the middle of a 10-year relationship with Macaulay Culkin. They were always hogging the Xerox machine upstairs, making copies of their own projects. They were super apologetic when I'd come in to use it, knowing they were using the company machine for their own thing. I never minded. It was fun running into them. They were a cute couple. Well, Macaulay always looked too thin and malnourished, so I once offered him a protein bar for my backpack. He declined. I was upgraded for a few weeks to writer's assistant, which meant I sat in a room with the staff and took exacting detailed notes of everything that was said over 10 hours. At the end of the night, I compiled hundreds of pages of notes into something readable, a document they could reference the next day. What they didn't know is that I had a second Word document open on my laptop, just for my own personal notes. The executive producer had worked on Carsey Werner's past shows with out-of-control stars. He was kind of a fix-it guy who could handle insane personalities. He would reminisce about the crazy egos of Roseanne and Brett Butler. He told us things about Bill Cosby long before the rest of the nation caught on. He shared how Roseanne was so nuts at the peak of her success that she'd fire writers on a weekly or daily basis. She started making them wear numbers around their necks because she didn't want to bother learning their names. He shared how Brett Butler, star of Grace Under Fire, once climbed a tree on the studio lot and refused to come down until she had her way. She had a severe drug problem, which she has chronicled in her own book, so it's fair game. And the drug problem led her to throwing a full can of Coke at the producer's head. He ducked and said, "Missed me." Outraged, she lunged at him. I shared these great stories with Rajiv on the weekends. He had the brilliant idea that most of the funniest things that happen on a sitcom never show up on TV. They're actually in the writer's room. That is why our first pilot was called The Room. We planned to outline the characters in the story about an egomaniacal star who torments writers of her bad sitcom. I had plenty of real-life material to draw upon from what I'd heard about Whoopi, Roseanne, Brett, and Bill. We planned to shoot this pilot in the office of the Christian Writing School where we met, Act 1. But we were a little worried about the content. Our show was definitely going to be for mature adult audiences because that's obviously how real comedy writers talk. We asked some of our friends, the funniest people we knew, Karen Whipple, Claire Sarah, Joel McCrary, to play writers, and they graciously agreed to take part in our experimental project. On a date with my then-boyfriend Junius, I met one of the funniest actors in town, Tim Bagley, who was playing Larry on Will and Grace at the time. He was also a reoccurring character on Monk and According to Jim. He was a member of the Groundlings improvisational group, alongside many SNL favorites like Maya Rudolph, Will Ferrell, and Sherry O'Terry. Tim knew Junius from the gym. After a few times of hanging out with Tim, I gingerly broached the idea of him joining our cast of The Room. Fortunately, Tim knew of Joel McCrary's work in American Beauty and Seinfeld and wanted to work with him. And he liked the idea of what we were doing, as improvisation was his specialty. By this time, my boss Kurt also knew of our plans to shoot a sitcom. He came on board with his own money and was actually able to secure the former Third Rock from the Sun writing room as a location for us to film on the weekend. Suddenly, we were shooting our project on the lot where I worked every day. CBS Radford is the legendary location where most of my favorite comedies had filmed. Roseanne, Seinfeld, The Mary Tyler Moore Show. So to make my own project there filled me with gape-jawed wonderment. Often, I ate at the little bridge-covered pond marking the spot where the lagoon was located on Gilligan's Island. My love of TV had probably started with this silly wish fulfillment series I never missed at 4 p.m. on Wood TV at Channel 8. But honestly, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I was working at the very location that was home to the 7 best fictional friends I've ever had. Michael, Hope, Ellen, Melissa, Gary, Nancy, and Elliot. 30-something was the show that changed TV forever by making it look and sound like film, with overlapping dialogue and dark, moody lighting. It captured the tough transition from young adulthood to grown-up responsibility. It examined all the issues I would face in my own life. It was better than film, in my opinion. It's the series that formed what kind of man I wanted to be in real life. And naturally, my writing is influenced by it in a unique way. It premiered in 1987, the same year my favorite movie, Broadcast News, was released. That's why my company is circa 87. Often 1939 is named as entertainment's golden year, the year both Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz rolled out. With all due respect to those masterpieces, 1987 is the year for me. Filming our first pilot on the Radford lot was a thrill. Once we had Tim Bagley on board, others signed up. We got Tony Hale, who is playing Buster Bluth on TV's coolest, funniest sitcom, Arrested Development. Tony would go on to win an Emmy for HBO's Veep. He's a wonderful actor and a good man, deserving of every bit of respect he gets from Hollywood. Laura Silverman of the Sarah Silverman program came on board. We did an exhaustive search for the lead actors who would play Lucas and Jamie. Our casting director found Phoenix Gonzalez, a Canadian actor who submitted on tape. It is very rare for an actor to be hired from a recorded audition. So very rare. And after about 300 in-person auditions, our casting director, Shane, finally found Gareth Reynolds to play Lucas. It's funny how you know the one you see when you see the one. I guess it's a lot like love in that way. We still needed to convince Christopher Knight from the Brady Bunch to cameo as himself. We had written the role for him as the composer of the bad TV theme song. He would come in and sing, for the roomful of writers, the theme he had written, and then, playing off the classic episode where Peter Brady's voice cracks, Christopher would crack his voice on the last note. His manager was really excited for Chris to play himself. He hadn't yet returned to television on his reality series, and he had been out of the public eye for many years. This might be the kind of hit project, to bring him back. We met at Mel's Diner on Sunset and pitched him the idea, and we quickly discovered it wasn't a slam dunk. It turns out, Chris hated singing. All of those Brady records were torture for him. He couldn't sing, but he was being forced to by the Hollywood machine that demands to be fed to make money. That episode where Peter's voice cracks sent me to therapy for years, Chris told us. Basically, the writers took advantage of something that was happening to me during puberty and wrote the episode around it. Public singing, in fact, is probably my biggest fear. Rajiv and I looked at each other. What if I rapped the song? Chris ventured. Would that be funny? It would be okay, but it wouldn't be the same joke. We really wanted to do this nod toward the classic sitcom episode. And I didn't want to lose Christopher Knight. This was another childhood crush to add to my list of Camerons and Dows and Danzas. Chris said he'd think about it. For a week we waited. We stayed busy casting other roles, but finally heard back. Chris said he knew it'd be funny and he'd just have to face his biggest fear, left over from child stardom. He did the scene as we wrote it, and he did a fantastic job. We needed a strong black woman to play the tyrannical star of Mama Know Best, a sitcom the writers of The Room were assigned to write. We reached out to Jackée Harry from 227, but she had other commitments. We also put the offer out to Kim Whitley, who had just done a hilarious episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm as a prostitute Larry picked up so he could use the carpool lane. Then I remembered I had recently interviewed Sherry Shepard for a Christian magazine 6 months ago. She worked on Less Than Perfect on the Redford lot, so Rajiv and I strapped on our balls and headed over to that soundstage to pitch the idea to Sherry. We found her dressing room on the second floor by acting as if we knew what we were doing. You can get far in life if you just act like you have the authority to do what you're doing. We knocked on her dressing room. "Come in," Sherry said. We entered. She was on her phone. Andy, stay on the line. Don't go anywhere. Who are you?" I was taken aback. I wasn't ready for that reaction. "Who the hell are you? I have Andy Dick on the line. Andy, call security," she yelled into the phone. Suddenly, I realized Sherry didn't recognize me, and she was probably scared of the brown Indian she'd never met. Rajiv always joked about looking like a terrorist, albeit an adorable terrorist with a big ear-to-ear friendly grin. "I'm Dan Steadman. I interviewed you 6 months ago for Christian Single magazine," I tried to say, with arched eyebrows in my most friendly voice. Sherry sighed and told Andy Dick she was fine. She stood up and gave me a big hug and apologized. I introduced her to the decidedly unterroristy Rajiv. We laughed about that for quite a while. After a half hour, Sherry was on board to play the diva star. We had nearly completed casting. 3 days before filming, Sherry's agents got wind of the fact that she was in our pilot. "You can't be in a pilot. You're a series regular on an ABC show," they told her. She called us, feeling terrible, saying she had to bow out of our project. We were left without a center to our show, and that's when our great friend Marianne Savel threw out a suggestion. She knew an actress named Octavia Spencer, who had been hilarious in Bad Santa. We said, "Sure, can you give us her number?" Next thing we knew, we were photographing Octavia in an alley behind her garage for the Mama Know Best poster that would be on the wall in our show. She was such a good sport. We instantly fell in love with her. I had seen her on a great episode of NYPD Blue. She was nervous about the improvisation, but said she would do her best. Obviously, 10 years later, 3 Oscar nods, 1 win for The Help, hosting Saturday Night Live, the whole world knows of her genius. The last missing piece was an actor who would play themselves in a lunch scene where young Lucas takes a seat, his first day on the job, outdoors next to a recognizable star. He flips out and can't stop bothering the actor. It gets so bad the actor has to stand and leave. Lucas had to feel about the actor the way I felt about Skippy from Family Ties coming to the mall near my house. Was The Room the story of little Danny Steadman? Almost seems that way. This project had gotten big. This was a break we were creating for ourselves. I decided to approach famous actors on the lot to see if I could get anyone who would do the scene. If my bosses at Carsey Warner found out that I, a lowly PA, was using my Whoopi production closet as a Circa 87 office, and that I was talking to the stars about my own project, I would have been fired immediately, on the spot. So I was careful to go about it the right way. I approached Ashton Kutcher, who had never met me, but recognized me as a guy who was always at the table reads on Monday. He probably thought I worked on his show. The staff was over 200 people. He politely said, no, I'm busy this weekend, but thanks. I never got a moment with Mila Kunis, though I searched for her high and low in the copy room. I did approach Laura Prepon, who was nice enough to invite me into her dressing room, acting as if we were friends that went way back. She said she'd love to play the part, but that she had to attend a race that weekend with her boyfriend. I approached Shannon Elizabeth from American Pie, who was guest starring on that 70s show. She came to my closet/office and took a seat and really seemed to be interested in doing it. She took the script and said she'd get back to me. That afternoon, I got a call from her agent yelling at me. "How dare you ask my client to be in your free project? She's an effing movie star. Who are you exactly?" "I'm nobody," I replied with a sigh. I hung up the phone. I didn't really want that guy calling Carsey Warner and getting me fired. Next, I walked up to another guest star that week, Brooke Shields, and pitched the idea as quickly as I could. I really didn't want to be seen by anyone. She was kind and friendly, and she took down my phone number. A few days went by, and I forgot about it. It was the week of production, and we had a million other things to turn our attention to. Getting craft services, securing locations, consulting our director Sean Lambert on everything, going over every little production detail with our producer Kurt Skemper, who was paying for this dog and pony show. I was still doing my job overnight of photocopying Whoopi scripts and delivering them. I got home and crashed. I couldn't believe how much work a big Hollywood production was. I needed some solid sleep. I awoke to the sound of my cell phone ringing at 7:30 a.m. It was an unknown caller. "Hello?" I said, my voice cracking like Peter Brady's. "Dan?" I said yes. "Dan, it's Brooke." "Huh? I didn't know any Brooks." "Brooke Shields?" she said, like she was questioning the validity of her own name. I jolted up out of bed. I couldn't believe Brooke Shields had taken our offer seriously and was really considering doing it. "Oh, hi, Brooke!" She went on to say she was incredibly flattered to be asked, but that she was always very nervous about playing herself. "I've never liked to do cameos as myself. It must be an insecurity of mine," she continued. "Plus the fact that it's improvised really scares the life out of me. I like a script and lines, but anyway, thank you so much. I think your project sounds amazing, and I can't wait to see it when it's done." With only 2 days to spare, I had to deliver a great actor. That's when I realized she was right under my nose. The brilliant Deborah Jo Rupp, who played Kitty Foreman. I worked up the nerve to approach Deborah. Once again, she recognized me as someone who worked for the production company. She really didn't ask me a lot of questions. I described the scene. She said she loved improvisation and that it would be fun to play herself and get pissed off at a fan. I told her we were filming that weekend in 2 days. "Honey, I live right down the street. What time do you need me?" I was flushed with relief and couldn't wait to call Rajiv and tell him that the most talented cast member of that 70s show was going to be in our project. They are all great, but Deborah Jo is a slam dunk of an actress, on the caliber of Tim Bagley and Karen Whipple and Octavia Spencer and Tony Hale. We finally had our cast, and that weekend we shot our first sitcom. The last scene showed Lucas walking across the studio lot with a nerdy briefcase in hand, which brings to mind a 19-year-old boy who rode a city bus to Culver City Studios and walked up to the guard gate without a car, briefcase in hand, for a scheduled meeting with the producer of Step by Step. Right? There is no better source for a writer than his or her own life.